Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Ms. Rahma and welcome back to the King Conference 2022. In this occasion, I'm going to tell you about my next material, which is creating an interactive classroom, chapter 13 by Brown, teaching by principles. Thank you for the reference. And it brings me to the quote on page 3, which is, crucially, in a language classroom, it is through language interaction that we access new knowledge, acquire and develop new skills, identify problems of understanding, deal with breakdowns in communication, and establish and maintain relationship. Alright, on to the next one, which is, Sorry for having trouble here, so I'm going to... Alright, in this exploring interaction, we got 3 points, which is interactive principles, interactive teachers, and interactive students. And the first point here is interactive principles. Interactive principles here has been elaborated by Storage, which is noted that collaboration means to share labor, which involves high mutuality and a spirit of equality, both of which make interaction fruitful and productive. In conclusion, interactive is a collaborative exchange thought, feeling, or ideas between 2 or more people. Right, which means interactive here, interactive principle or interaction is a necessary or is an essential part of a classroom being interactive. And then we also have some points that makes classroom interactive or makes the interaction is going in the class, which is first one, interaction is enhanced by automaticity. So which means that interaction is being brought spontaneously, not planned, because we as teachers have to manage the class, which there's time that we have to improve and there's time that we have to follow our lesson plan. And the next one is as students become engaged with each other in speech, act, or fulfillment and agency, their deepest drives are rewarded. And then the third point is interaction requires the use of self-regulated strategies. And the fourth one is interaction requires the learner to invest in the process of learning and to express one's identity within a language community. All right. And then also next point, which is, so I'm going to just take it manually, and the next one is the culture components. Interactive speech and writing requires that intellectuals be thoroughly versed in the cultural nuances of language culture. And then the last but not least is, through interaction, learners realize that the agency as they expressed ideas, thought and feelings on ultimate work toward empowerment within the communities of practice in which they are situated. All right, and it's bringing me to the next point, which is interactive teachers. In interactive classroom, we also have interactive teachers as the main point. Okay, interactive teacher here is an definition of who is fully aware of the group dynamics of a classroom. Teacher here has different roles, and the first role is teacher as a controller, and then the second one is teacher as director, teacher as manager, teacher as facilitator, and teacher as resource. The first point here says that teacher as a controller. It means that teacher has a role to control the class, because there's a time that teacher have to improvise, have to spontaneously say something, or we don't know what will happen in the class. So what the teacher needs to do is to control the class itself. We might have the plan before the class is going, but as a controller, as a teacher, the role as controller is very essential here. And the next one is teacher as a director. You know, director, there's a director in group orchestra or in a drama. We have director that have the structure, that has planned how the movie is going, how the opera will be going. So that's the role of the teacher, which means we have the guide, or we will be the guide to the students and to the whole class, because we need to make the class going without any chaos. And that's the role of the director. And the next one is teacher as a manager. In a company, of course, there's a manager that has a plan, and that's what the teacher does as well. We have a lesson plan, and that we are going to use in a class to manage the class. And then the teacher as a facilitator. Facilitator here means a place for the student to ask questions, to ask for explanation. We facilitate the students, and that's what the facilitator means. And then the last one is teacher as a resource. Resource here, we will give the input to the students. Resource, we explain something, we give the material, and the student will elaborate and also will absorb and digest what we are giving to the students. And then I have a note here that we don't have to control a little too far, or please don't control a little too far and become master controls of every single thing that students doing in the class, because student might feel suffocated if we control every single thing that they are doing. And then also, don't be too laissez-faire, which means it is a teacher that doesn't even control anything in the class. Just sit down and please do anything, please just do this without having to watch what the students are doing in the class. So the class would be an ultimate chaos, of course, if we are doing laissez-faire itself. All right, that's my note. And on to the next one is, the next point, also the third point, is interactive students. Here is the point about this one. Right? Interactive students here means that students in your classes will have many different profiles. We have different confidence, anxious, motivated, risk-taking, reflective, etc. Every student is different, so we have to take a look on our student. All right. And what the teacher should do is that we have to discover those characteristics, help students maximize traits that might work in their favor, minimize those that are working against them, and help them each to seize their agency in this new language. All right, so as the students have different characteristics, they have different anxiety, and they have different style of learning. So we have to take a look at, we have to see, and we have to recognize the differences, and we need them to size up to the class and getting along to each other. All right. And then we have to all recognize and encourage student roles that contribute to collaborative group interaction. There are some points and there are some ways on doing this, which is recognizing. We can, the first one is to take initiative by suggesting options, change direction, provide new ideas, and then we can also seek information, ask for facts, solicit opinions, and we can also question the group by asking for further clarification, and then clarify when there is confusion or misunderstanding. In this point, student and teacher have to be open to each other, whether the teacher give the place for student to consult and to talk to the teacher itself, and also the teacher should also initiate a collaborative learning, which is asking questions. And then we can also summarize to put contribution into a pattern. All right, on to the next one here is initiating interaction, questioning strategies. The first one, we have function and advantages of teachers' questions, and the next one is display and referential questions. Categories of referential questions are the means of stimulating interaction. The first one here, function and advantages of teacher questions. Okay, on to the next one. Function and advantages of teacher question. Here, the first one I got, how do teacher questions stimulate interactions? So we have some answer here. The first one is teacher question gives students the impetus and opportunity to practice language comfortably without having to risk initiating language themselves. And the next one is teacher question are useful device to stimulate students to practice morphosynthetic, phonological, and discourse form that are the focus of a lesson. And to the next one here is teacher questions can serve to initiate a chain reaction of student interaction. And the next one here is teacher questions give the instructor immediate feedback about student comprehension. And the next one here, teacher question provides students with opportunities to find out what they think by hearing what they say. Alright, the next one here is display and referential questions. Display questions are questions that attempt to elicit information already known by teacher, all the way to highly referential questions that request information not known by questioner. And display questions here are useful to elicit a certain desired grammatical, phonological, or discourse pattern from a student. Example, is it cloudy outside? Alright, let's take a look on what display questions are. Display questions are usually used by the teacher to seek the understanding by the student. For example, is it cloudy outside? Is it cloudy outside? Teacher know what the answer is, whether it is yes or no. For example, the day is sunny, but still the question is it cloudy outside? Of course, the answer is yes or no. So students have to answer no, it's not. In this one, we are going to seek information from the student, whether the student are going to say yes or no. If the students say yes, which means they are wrong and we have to correct the mistake. And if the student say no, it is not with the full structure and correct structure here, it means that student is comprehending what we are giving to them. Alright, referential question in which the teacher can engage students with more communicative authenticity and likely to be meaningful. Referential questions here is the time where we need to give question or meaningful question, a realistic question to the student about the occupancy, about how their day was going, and then about their job, about their school. So the student will talk and tell about the realistic story of their life. So that's what means referential questions is. All right. On to the next one. Here is categorize of referential questions. The next one here, categories of teacher question adapted from Kinsella 1991. Okay, so we got some points here, and the first point is, okay, what is it? Knowledge questions, eliciting factual answers, testing recall and recognition of information. Knowledge question. Knowledge question is when we are going to see the understanding of a knowledge of something. We can initiate the question by what does it mean, can you please elaborate, explain, etc. And then we can also have comprehension question, which is interpreting and extrapolating. It is about to seek student comprehension. We can initiate the question by what does it mean by, what it is, and etc. And then we got also application question, applying information heard or read to new situation. Application here is a practical question. We can initiate the question by how to, and how to, for example, we are having a material about cooking, about doing something manual, so we can use a lot of application questions. And then inference questions, forming conclusions that are not directly stated in instructional materials. Alright, inference question here is to draw conclusion. We can initiate the question by what is the conclusion, what does it mean by, why is he like this, or etc. etc. And then analysis questions, breaking down into parts, relating parts to the whole. In this question, we ask the student to analyze. Please analyze. And then what is the difference between blah blah and blah blah. And then we also got the next one is synthesis question, combining elements into a new pattern. Combining elements into a new pattern is when we ask students to imagine something. What can you improve from this one? How do you improve your English? So we ask students to think about the future by imagining something. That's what synthesis questions are. And to the next one is evaluation question. It is making a judgment of good and bad, right or wrong, according to some set of criteria and starting why. It is to compare, it is to differentiate, it is to distinguish. We can initiate the question by saying compare, distinguish, different. What is the difference between this one and this one? Also, it is used largely in material that is about comparative or superlative adjective. Which one is bigger, which one is taller, which one is more modern. So that is the use of evaluation questions. Alright, into the next one is going to the next one. Categorize of referential questions. How not to discourage interaction, questions to avoid. The first one is too much class time spent on display question. Display question, do you still remember that? Display question is when you know the answer but you still ask the student to answer the questions. Okay, too much class time spent on display question. If you ask student, is it cloudy outside? Is it a book? Is it an animal? Of course, it will make the student underestimate the question itself. So you have to not take time a lot to spend on this kind of question, which is display questions. And then we also have a question that insults student intelligence by being so obvious. For example, you take a book and still ask the question, is it a book? That's kind of insult, isn't it? So you have to be intelligent, you have to be creative with your own question. And then vague questions that are worded in abstract or ambiguous language. For example, do you pretty much understand more or less what you do? It is a bit ambiguous, isn't it? You can just make it into simple, do you understand? Is there any question? Or if you say, do you pretty much understand blah, 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 that's too long and student will just take it so difficult to understand the questions. And then into the next one. Questions stated in language that is too long, too complex, or too wordy for oral comprehension. Yeah, this is what I mentioned before. The question should be not too long. It shouldn't be too long, and the question should be just simply worded in a very simple term. Okay, on to the next one is too many rhetorical questions that you intend to answer yourself that students think you want them to answer, then get confused when you supply the answer. For example, you know the answer. For example, too many rhetorical questions. Rhetorical question is when you know the answer but you still ask the student to answer. But it is different from the display questions because this question here, you know that student is able to answer this one. You don't seek for information of their comprehension, but you still ask them to answer. That's what makes a rhetorical question here is overtly used. So we need to take care of that one. And to the next one here is Random questions that don't fall into logical, well-planned sequence, disrupting student thought patterns. So we cannot just take any question out of nowhere that is not related to the material, and the question itself should be related to what is going in the present, not just when you tell a material and then it just out of nowhere you ask any question that it has no correlation with the material. It will be disruption. It will just distract their understanding and their concentration. So we have to avoid this one. On to the next one is other means of stimulating interaction. Strategy for promoting interaction in the classroom is that the first one, designing pair work and group work, and then giving commands or direction. Open your books, do the following exercise. All right, commands and direction here is very essential. It is very important, and you cannot do this in a wordy way. You have to do this in a simple and clear way. On to the next one is using organizational language. Get into small groups. Organizational language here means that the language is used in a formal one, not in an informal one. Reacting to student praise and recognition. So recognition and praise here are very essential. And to the next one is responding genuinely to the student-initiated question. If student has a question, you have to respond genuinely. You cannot just say yes or no, but it is better for you to take more explanation, give some elaboration to the question, because the student will be more appreciated, feel more appreciated. Okay. And the next one is encouraging students to develop their own strategies to stimulate self-regulation and autonomy. And the next one is following short lecture, brief teacher monologues with designed collaborative student tasks. All right, so before I'm going to the next one, I got a story that in my class, one of my class, which is English Conversation 1, level something, I got a student that is very interactive. Just call it Jack. Jack is really talkative, and he likes to initiate something. He likes to ask something. And me, as a listener, I have to listen everything what Jack says, but we have to take control of the class because Jack is really talkative. He likes to take the whole class as the main character. But in this one, even though the student is interactive, but you still have to take control because, as I mentioned, we cannot overtly, or we cannot just too much spending on referential questions or on a display question, because we have to take the class into the balance. If we just follow what the student is like doing, if the student like talking and we like to listen to the student, well, the class will not be going as what we plan. So teacher as a controller and the manager here is very essential to do the class in a structure 1. Okay, so that's a little story from me. Now we go back to the next one, which is group work. Group work here is alright, so we got 3 points before I elaborate what group work is, but we have myth about group work, we have advantages of group work, we have implementing group work in your classroom. The first one here is a myth about group work. The first myth here is the teacher is no longer in control of the class. So that's very obvious. If the group work is large and too many group works, too many chaos in the class, so the teacher will be no longer in control of the class. Well, we can still in control, but in some point and somehow we have the difficulties to be in control of the class, and that's true. All right, and to the next one is students will use their native language. As we don't have the control in the class, students will use their native language because other student or other members in the group will encourage that student to use their native language. If we can't use our native language to make it easy to do the task, why would we bother to use English? So that's the point of this one. And the myth number 3 is student error will be reinforced in small groups. Alright, when one student has an error and she is the leader of the group and she said incorrectly, she said something, she or he said something incorrectly, well, the other will follow the incorrectness in the group. So the incorrectness here is reinforced. Alright, and then myth number 4 is teacher cannot monitor all groups at once. Alright, we got one body and 2 eyes and we cannot see all the groups is doing. So we cannot monitor all the groups at once. And that's true. So we have to take this one into the consideration. Alright, myth number 5 is myth that some learners prefer to work alone. It is related to my own experience. I actually like to work alone than being in a group, but being in a group has more, more advantages than work alone by myself. Because like or not like, if you like or don't like to work in a group, you still have to work in a group, because there are some advantages that I will explain later on why we have to do the work in the group. And then myth number 6 here is diverse student learning style complicate group work. Alright, so student has a lot of styles of learning. We have audiolingual, we have physical response, and we got the others. And if we combine these into one group, it will make the task that they are doing feel more complicated, and it gives them some difficulties, more difficulties than they are doing when they are alone. So that's the point of this one. Okay, for number 1 here, for myth number 1, I got some points that we may look at. All right. The first one is the teacher is no longer in control of the class. In the following educational context, control could be perceived as an important issue. The institution requires a traditional whole class methodology. And then we got also, in your cultural context, effective learning is believed to be student quietly working in orderly fashion, speaking only when spoken by the teacher. Okay, and then large classes of 50 or more students make the managing of many small groups problematic. It is so obvious. And then discipline is a major issue. The assumption is that SS will misbehave. And then we got also, you are in language to speaker yourself with somewhat low confidence in your own ability. So this is the problem that the teacher usually have, which is we as a non-native English speaker, we somehow have this insecurity. We are not 100% confident with our English. So that will be the problem of the class, of the teacher control itself. So we just need to be confident, and as non-native English speaker, we just admit ourselves that we do make mistakes as well. We also learn, and students also learn. So we are learning by teaching. On to the next one is, students will use their native language. And these are the problems, this obvious problem that we have to face. The first one is that, okay, guideline for setting a positive climate for group work. So these are some guidelines to solve this problem. To overcome this one is that we have to stress the importance of practice in the second language, and then appeal to various motivational factors affecting them so that they can see some real uses for English in their own lives. The problem is that, alright, The student is going to our class because they want to pass the exam, the English exam, the TOEFL. But we also need to emphasize the use of English in their own life, their daily life. So that is what motivates the student to speak English in the group. Because we have, as a teacher, we have to be the resource that gives the motivation to the students. On to the next one is, your own overt display of enthusiasm will help to set tone for enjoyment. Our overt display, so we have to be interactive, we have to be enthusiastic as a teacher. As a teacher, we have to train ourselves to be enthusiastic, to be attractive to the student. That's what makes the student motivated to use English. And to the next one is that, remind your student of the security offered by the smaller group. This one, it means that the student will have the security, they will have the place for them to speak English in the group, because their group will encourage each other to speak English. That was the group needs to do, to encourage each other member to speak English. Remind them that the research has shown that people do better in tests if they dive into the language itself rather than just study to pass the exam. All right, it is the same point that I've mentioned before, that some student really needs to speak English because they pass the exam, because they want to pass the exam. But in other way, the student really needs the use of English itself, which will be rewarded after they masterize the English. Okay. And then myth number something, diverse student learning styles complicate group work. Alright, there are some points about this one. Following are some possible scenarios. Okay, the first one is a highly left-brain oriented student is put off by otherwise more right-brain members of the group. And to the next one here is, quicker or impulsive thinkers tend to blurt their ideas, overwhelming the slower reflective thinkers. On to the next one here is, impulsive learners get easily frustrated with the group's process, which they perceive as circuitous, and then competitive members of a group are reluctant to share information with others. All right, so these are the different kind of students. They have different characteristics, and diverse student learning here complicate the group work, which means somehow in this first point, that highly left-brained and highly right-brained, we sometimes need to put them into one group. We have to combine between the left and the right brain ones, but sometimes we also need to put the left brain with the left brains one. So we have to differentiate them. Left brain with left brains, right brain with right brains. But in another occasion, we also need to combine them to see what it is going to see the result if we combine them. And then quicker and impulsive or reflective, that somehow be called as a thinker. Sometimes, as the first point here, sometimes quicker needs to be in the same group as the quicker one, reflective with the reflective one, but somehow we need to combine them as well. And to the others as well, it works the same way. Okay, as the last point here, I need to elaborate as well that competitive members, or the members that stand out the most, usually take control of the group, but that is the use of part working. We need to take part of the working, not just the standout one or the competitive one that needs to do the task, but all the member here has the contribution to the task. Okay, and then to the next one here is, right, talkative students dominate the process. Talkative here is when the student really like to talk. It's like what happened to my class, which the talkative one really like to be the main character of the class. He really likes to be shown and to shine and outshine the others. And advantages of the group work here, as we have seen the myth of the group work, but group work also have the advantages. Group work is a generic term for the variety of techniques in which two or more students are assigned a task that involves collaboration and self-initiated language. Pair work is simply group work in groups of two, but usually involves less complex and briefer tasks. So we got 2 parts, which is group work and pair work. The first one, group work generates interactive language, and they value each other, contribution, cooperate, learn from each other, and help each other. By June 2007, page 2, and group works offer an embracing, effective climate. So students will embrace each other, affect each other, and encourage each other to motivate each other as well. On to the next one here is that the shared friendliness of small group helps learners to feel more secure, then therefore more capable of participating. And group work promotes learner responsibility and autonomy. Yeah, learners' responsibility and autonomy, because teacher take less control of group work, so the autonomy will happen itself by the group work. Okay, and to the next point is group work is a step toward individualizing instruction, to individualize. So they will take the initiation themselves, then being instructed by the teacher. Okay. The teacher can recognize and capitalize upon their individual differences, age, culture, heritage, fields of study, cognitive style, to name a few, by several selections. So in a diverse class which has which contains between a student from high school and contained from adult, so in this diverse class we can see the individual instruction. We see that student will recognize the role of each member of the class, of the group. Okay, on to the next one is to implement group work is implementing group work in your classroom. How to implement the awesome point, which is classroom language, pair work versus group work techniques, planning and initiating group work tasks, monitoring the tasks, debriefing, and processing. All right, classroom language. There are other forms of classroom language that can make a difference in the success of a group task. Consider the following list adapted from Sorossi and Shrek, 2006. Interacting another student. All right. So the means of classroom language here is that we got some phrases that should be used in language classroom. For the example is excuse me, asking for clarification, sorry, what do you mean? And we got many others, could you elaborate please? And then we could also let me know, tell you why. And then coming to consensus, would you all agree to, do you agree? And giving our exercises with partner, oh, I read something different. And then also giving oral feedback to peers' written work. Have you thought about something? So that's the classroom languages. There are many others that we can list in this one, but every classroom, every school has different language, classroom language. And then pair work versus group work, as I mentioned before, the awesome point of this one. Pair work is more appropriate than group work for tasks that are short, linguistic, simple, and quite controlled in terms of structure of the task. So pair work here, we have to give a less complicated task for the pair work rather than the group work. And types of activities suitable for the pair work are practicing dialogues or doing drills with a partner. Okay, and then we could also simple question and answer exercises, very brief or 1 minute or less brainstorming activities, checking written work with each other, preparation for merging with a larger group, and any brief activity for which the logistic of assigning groups, moving furniture and getting students into the groups is too distracting. Okay. And then this one is group work techniques. We got games, role play and simulation, drama, project, interview, brainstorming, information gap, jigsaw, problem solving and decision making, opinion exchange or debate. Okay, you may take a look at the book and the sources to see the elaboration of each one of these techniques. And then we got also planning and initiating group work tasks. The first one is to introduce the technique. Second one is to justify use of small group for the technique. 3 is the model of technique, and 4 give explicit detailed instruction. 5 divide the class into groups. 6 check the clarification, and 7 is to set the task in motion. The first one is about to introduce, or we give the direction. We give the elaboration about what the students need to do in the group. And the second one is to justify the use of small groups for the technique. So we justify the use of a small group. So why we should do this in a group, not in the whole class or in individually or in the pair work. We should give the reason why it should be done in a group. And then 3 is model the technique. It's just like a simulation. We ask for a group to go into front of the class, so we should simulate what they should do. So the other student or the other group will get the clarification or clear understanding about what we need to do. And then 4 is to give explicit detailed instruction. It's just like to give the instruction, but we give it in more specific way. And then 5 is divide the class into groups. Yeah, we divide. We sometimes just say 1, 2, 3, 4 and count. But there are some points that we need to consider. So we have to divide the student in a different way, and I will elaborate that for later on. And the number 6 is to check for clarification. Check for clarification is by doing a question. Do you understand? What do we need to do? Can you tell me what do we need to do? Okay. Ask for clarification, and then start the task in motion. Start the task in motion is like we have to control the class, and we have to take and watch what the students do in the group. All right, as I promised before, I got some points for number 5, which is divide this class into the groups. So these are some points that I need to take a look. Categorize to consider 4 pre-assigning groups. This is how we categorize and what we need to consider, which the first one is to see their native language, especially in ESL classes with varied native language background. So it happens usually in America in a very diverse situation, which some student has different native language. And then proficiency levels, age or gender differences, culture or subcultural group, and then personality type, it really matters, and cognitive style preference, cognitive developmental stages, that's for children, and then interest, and then prior language experience, and target language goals. So these are the considerations that you have to take a look before you divide the class into groups. Okay, and then the next one is that monitoring the task. Right, while the students are doing the task in the group, we have to monitor. So how do we monitor? Those are the guidelines. The first one here, actively circulate through the groups. Circulate, we have to take circle, walk around and see what the groups are doing. And then we can also show interest, but remember it is their group, not yours. And to the next one here is offer a few helpful comments, but don't dominate. It's like when we are watching the student are doing the task, we offer some comments. Oh, that's a good one. It is not like this, please do this way. So that will help. And then maintain to fly on the wall, not disruptive role. Maintain to fly on the wall is like you watch the student doing, but it's not disruptive. It's like, oh, the teacher is here, so the student will have a little distraction here because they may got intimidated because the teacher is watching. So okay, you have to take that into the consideration. All right, keep your own verbal comments to a minimum. Yeah, you have to keep the comments, but it should be minimum and not disruptive. Divide your time as equally as possible among the groups. Okay, so we have to be equal to each group, not to be biased, because sometimes we like some student, oh, the group one is very interactive. They have done so much, and we like to go to the group one only because they do better than the others. So that should not happen, because we have to be equal. We cannot be biased, right? And to the next one is correct student error only if an error is causing a crucial misunderstanding or a student requests it. As I mentioned before, the myth was true, right? The myth is saying that error could be reinforced in the group. So that's what the teacher should do. We have to correct the errors only when it's causing a crucial misunderstanding. So the error, at least the error will not be reinforced in the group. Okay, debriefing or processing the task. So the next one is that reporting on task objectives. So this is what we should do. Leave enough time for group presentation, entertain some brief discussion, provide motivation for further group work. So we have to take equal time for each group to do the presentation. Sometimes we do the presentation long enough for one group, but the other group we just takes a less time, and that will be not equal for that one. It will be for a bit offending. Okay, and we also need to focus on form. The debriefing phase is usually inappropriate time for the teacher to call attention to the discourse features, reminding students of forms that seem to cause error. Alright, it is about reminding the material. If the student has some tweaks to the material, they are not doing what we expect. So we have to focus on form. We have to focus on the material that we are giving to the students. Okay, and to the third one is that establishing effective support. A debriefing phase also serves the purpose of exploring the group process itself and bringing the class back together as a whole community of learners. That's the use of the group work as well. We have to give some effective support. Effective here is that we encourage or motivate the student to do the group work. That the group work is good for you guys. It's not that bad, because there are some effective sides that you will get by doing the group work. Okay, and the next one is that, okay. Right, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you. Is there any question?
Hello, Ms. Rahma.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Rahma, I have a question. What activities can you suggest for unmotivated students?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
What activities can you suggest for unmotivated students?
The activity. For my training, I see that role play is really motivating for the student, and we also have drills. Drills are important. We will give the students some quote or some word to drill to each other. There are many ways, as I mentioned before. There are so many ways on doing the group work. Sorry, I'll give you the explanation here. All right, there are so many ways. We have games. There are many games that offer you a motivational classroom activity. We have role play, we have drama. I cannot say one actually, because there are so many options. Right?
All right, so hello, Ms. Rahma.
Hello?
Based on your experience, how if there's a student that don't really like to do a pair work, what will you do?
Okay, pair work is important and essential, but we need to take a look at the lesson plan. If the student like pair work, yes, let's do the pair work, but we also need to do the other way. We have to work individually, we have to work in a group, and somehow we have to work as a whole class, because it needs to be balanced. All right, and students like pair work, so we need, what should we do? Doing the pair work all the time? No, because student needs to be taught as well, taught by doing others. Right. And pair works usually done when the student has bias or has best friend in the class, but they also need to interact with others, not just their best friend, because interaction in the class, we not only tell the material, but we also teach the student to interact with others. That's my answer.
Okay. Hi, Miss Rahma.
Hi.
Okay, I need your suggestion, and I have a curiosity about your learning experience when you conduct a pair work in your classroom, and your students keep talking in their native language. So you already motivate them and do many things, and they keep talking. And what will you do? Because sometimes I got this problem too in my classroom. Can you help me, please? Okay, thank you.
When we are on the age, we can give punishment, but a good punishment, of course, punishment that reinforces or motivates students to talk in English. Punishment will do. That's my answer.
Hello, Miss Rahma.
Hello.
Okay, it's very interesting. Yeah, thank you for sharing with us the knowledge that we need to know as a teacher. And after listening to your presentation, I think there's a need for a teacher to be interactive, right? And I think teachers have so many, right, characters and personalities. Do you think that it is possible for quiet, or there's a possibility for a teacher that she's not humorous, she's quiet? Is it possible for teachers like these to be able to be interactive in the classroom in dealing with the students? Thank you.
Yes, it is possible, because we as a teacher, we are required to be interactive and interesting to the student. We are teacher, not we are ourselves. So you like or not, you have to change yourself into the teacher that it is required. If you are not like that, then the class will not be going as you expected. You expected the class to be quiet and the student just do the individual learning, and that's not what the teacher do, because it is an occupation and you are required to do something with it. So you have to at least change that. You have to at least have the two faces. Two faces is not bad in this term, because you have to train yourself. There is a way. Yeah, the way is to train yourself. You cannot be in the zone, in the comfort zone that, all right, I am quiet, I'm sorry, so I just want to be myself like this. No, that's not a successful teacher. The teacher is when she or he can adapt and can be what the institution or the school or the student is expecting. Thank you. I hope it helps.
A study shows that when giving a question, teachers do not give enough time. In the study, the terminology is the wait time is too short. In other words, a teacher gives a question and then the student needs time actually to answer, but then the teacher interrupts, either giving answer to his or her own question, or does something else. In your experience, how did it go in your class when you ask questions? What strategies did you apply to give your student ample or enough time to answer?
Okay, is it in this point that the student doesn't have enough time to answer my question?
The teacher's problem. I said there is a research. The research shows that teachers give too short time to the student to answer. Okay, my question is, how did it happen in your class?
Okay, so student doesn't have enough time to elaborate the answer. So we as a student needs to give the instruction that the student needs to do this in a short time. So we give the instruction that the student should do this, should answer in a simple term.
Did you have the feeling that the teacher actually needs to wait for the student to answer?
Yes.
Did you have the feeling that the students takes too long to answer in the class?
Yes, it happens as well. So I will explain and I will give the question in a simple term, and also I usually give the guide. If the student is really stuck in time and doesn't know what to do, and that will happen in my class, I will give at least a little cue to the student and what they should answer after all. So for example, I give what happened today, how was your day, but the student doesn't know what to answer, how's your day, and then I say, is it good, what happened, is it special? So these are little cues that will help the student, and for limiting time, the student will only give small answer and in this very simple term. And for that, I will motivate the student that it's okay to make mistake, because they usually make mistake and that really deter them to answer the question, and they don't even know what to say in English. So simple term and a simple way to answer. Thank you. That's all my presentation. See you and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.